Hello and welcome to part 1 of the walkthrough of the new features released for Business Central 2023 Wave 2. Welcome to part 1 of what's new in Business Central 2023 Wave 2. Analyze mode. This functionality was made available in the previous version of Business Central. And if you haven't seen this yet or aren't quite aware of the functionality, then the basic idea is to create pivots of the data from within the pages in Business Central. Now with the additional use of queries, now bear in mind you still need code in order to create the query in the first place, but your query can look at multiple related tables. And once that's published, then you can access that from within the Smart List option of that page. Permissions can now be used to limit the users that can analyze data, and you can also share the analysis. So by copying the link, you can send that to another BC user and they will have the same information presented to them as you have just created yourself. Edit in Excel, one of my favourite additions to Business Central. It's now been made available in journals and worksheets. That should make modifying data easier, obviously still provided that the user has the correct permissions. It's been added to the bin contents list, which can be useful if you're looking to do a find and replace on bin codes. I did find though that on the planning worksheet, if you edit that in Excel, an awful lot of columns are exported, so just be careful what you're editing before you try to import that back in again. Another new option available on the item card then is to adjust your inventory balances. Now this was available, they have extended it a little more now where you can do it by location from this screen. Not a screen I was overly fond of using, but it's there if you want to adjust quantities by location. Search and data, and we'll just do a walkthrough here as well. You can now type the data to search for in the Tell Me, and what that'll do now is it'll bring the search company data option up and still display that information there. You can show the tables that the related search uses, and you can also add to that as well, but just be careful not add too much or it will slow the search down. You also have the ability to add in multiple search terms now, which should make it easier as well. Related record lookup. Such a simple addition, but really effective. Now when drilling into, say, the item number from a sales order, there'll be a new option called Show Details. This takes you directly into the item card without having to go through the item list first. Really effective way to eliminate clicks for all users on a daily basis. Browser tabs. Now if you're one of those users that like to have multiple tabs open, if you're multitasking, then this will definitely make your life easier. Simply set the company badge on the company information, and the tabs will then be updated to display that so that you can identify at a glance what company you're in. It'll also display the list that you're sitting in and if you have applied any additional filters to that. So it could look at items in one particular company, and if you're looking at customers in another company and applied filters, it will display that information for you as well. Description 2. This has now been added to at least 50 different pages as a non-visible field. No more development required in order to add it to that page. The user can add it via the personalization, which is much easier and less work for the developers. Now the navigation, there's added actions on the validation error dialogues, which I suppose enhances the previous error message that provided a link to go to a corrective action to fix the problem. And it is keyboard friendly because you can use Alt, Up and Tab, and it'll allow you to step through the process. Intercompany. You can now connect across environments, which is fantastic. So no more need to export and import files. It's easy to set up using the assisted setup and connect using web services. This will involve the use of AAD authentication. Another nice feature is the availability of approvals now within the intercompany journals. That's been a bit of a gap for a while now because the approvals were on for general journals now for many versions, so it's nice to see that the intercompany has caught up. As with the intercompany, consolidation can now also run across multiple environments, eliminating any need for imports and exports of files. There is a wizard that will help with the ease of the setup, and you're able to grant access with the entry ID across environments. Now, the currency exchange changes. You must enable this functionality from within feature management first. And one thing I found was that the report for the exchange rate adjustments, if you run it from the search, it still brings up the old version. But if you run it from within the currencies page, then it'll bring you up the new version, which is shown here. And you'll notice that there's a few more filters that you can place on this. So fantastic now that you can have a preview of the exchange rate adjustments before you actually post them. Your dimensions on the adjustment can be from 3 different sources. So you can have it from the source, you don't have to have any dimensions, or they can be from the GL account itself. You can post by transaction or summarize by currency, which is another great addition to cutting down the number of entries that you would be creating on your general ledger. And the one that I'm most excited about now is that you can reverse entries that have been adjusted. That has been a bugbear for a long time, and it's great to see that that's now achievable. GL allocations. Now this should definitely appeal to the finance users and looks to be fairly easy to set up. You've got the new allocation account set up where you can determine the split across either GL accounts, statistical accounts, or bank. Not sure where we would ever use it for bank, but that option is available. And you can have a preview option before posting, and that's the redistribution account allocations. Payment practices. So for larger companies that need to report on how well they pay on time, you have now got a field on the vendor card for company size. You have a new payment practices list and card where you can define your options of whether it's vendor, customer, vendor and customer. And then the lines will be broken down by department. So you can see here we've got vendors and customers. Now I couldn't find where you define the periods, but you still have the ability then to modify the results and print out the report. So it's definitely aimed at those larger companies. Drop shipments, again, must be turned on in the feature management. So this is where you would maybe have what we would call like ABC deliveries, where you're shipping from one country to another and then directly into a third country. So you now have the option to include that in your interstat, which is great, and it'll compare that with the country code that is set up in your company information. Customer statements. Now there's a new field here for your style option. So if you have balance, then it'll show you all of the transactions that have occurred within that period, whether they have been closed or not. You also have the open item, and that will only show you the transactions that have a remaining amount at that period end. And the final option then are the fields on the sales and receivables and purchase and payables, where you can prevent the document date changing every time you update the posting date. Now just be aware that this is only available in documents and not journals, and it will be turned off for any new companies you set up, but if you're upgrading from an older version to BC, then this will be turned on. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time for part 2. But if you want any more information on Business Central, please visit our website at www.sysco-software.com.